Welcome everyone. Welcome to this another session. We have already heard about previous lectures from Dilip Thatte. So let me introduce him in a very short way, and then I can hand over the control to Dilip Thatte. So Dilip is a student of science, spirituality, and Vedanta. He is a trained Hindu chaplain. He was recognized by Forum for Hindu Awakening with Vishwa Hindu Ratna Award in 2010. He routinely talks at high schools, universities, colleges, churches, mosques, temples, and multi-faith congregations. He has represented Hinduism and presented papers at the Parliament of World Religions in Australia and Utah. He is associated with the non-profit organization Seven Star Foundation, which is engaged in promoting peace through interfaith education leading to understanding. He has been a senior executive for major global corporations and has traveled extensively worldwide. An alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad from India, he has a master's degree in chemical engineering and a master's degree in business administration. He currently works at the National Institute of Standard and Technology, NIST, and is focused on innovation and growth of the manufacturing sector in USA. He is also a certified executive leadership coach who is actively in coaching senior executives in US corporation, non-profits, and the federal government. So I welcome Dilip Thatte, and I now hand over the control to Dilip ji. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Aniruddha. Can you all hear me okay, Aniruddha?
Yes, we can
Okay,
hear you
great.
perfectly.
Great. Good afternoon. Welcome to this exciting session that we're going to have. First of all, I want to thank Aniruddha, the president of MKM, and the MKM executive team for organizing this. And Rajani Zogalkar has been a key part of this organization. So thank you very much. I also want to thank all of you for spending your valuable time for the next hour, hour and a half in engaging in this discussion on Karma Yoga. Um, as Shankara's says that Durlabham Triyame Vedat Devanugraha Hetukam Manushatvam Mumukshatvam Mahapurusha Samshraya. These are the three things very difficult to come by in life. To be born as a human being, which we all have done, to be a mumukshu, that means curious to know about the truth, the absolute truth, and the company of the learned ones, Mahapurusha Samshraya. And this afternoon, you have demonstrated that you are mumukshu, and we all will have a nice satsang with each other. I wish you, with all that, I wish you very happy Dashara. Today is a very auspicious day of Dasara. And this is the Navratri, conclusion of the Navratri, where Ma Durga is worshipped all over. And I came across a very interesting scientific fact from ancient, like Hindu embryology. And I'll just take about a minute to share that with you. We receive 50% of nuclear DNA from our mother and 50% from our father. But we receive 100% of mitochondrial DNA from our mother. This is very special. Many of you are scientists, biochemists, and you will appreciate this even more. You probably already know this, but I did not know, and I thought I'll share with you. Mitochondrial DNA is a small circular chromosome found inside the mitochondria, the powerhouse of cell. Mitochondria and thus mitochondrial DNA are passed almost exclusively from mother to the offspring through the egg cell. Mitochondria produce ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. It's called ATP. which is the energy currency of the biological system. For everything we do, we require ATP. ATP is the source of energy for doing all activities. For example, for moving your hand, you consume billions of ATPs. In short, you receive the power or the energy DNA from your mother. Your mother received it from her mother, and so on and so forth. That's how the ancient Indian texts indicate the god of power is mother. That is why the god of power is mother. Adi Shakti or Ma Shakti, the feminine life force. What a fantastic revelation from the scriptures. I did not realize that. And what appropriate to worship Ma Durga, who is the source of energy for the whole humanity. So, with that, let us get started on Karma Yoga. The agenda I'll just take a few minutes to review what we have been discussing and then get into the Karma Yoga. And then we'll talk and we will have sufficient time to discuss caste system. The reason is it is one of the most controversial and yet important subject because we and our children, we both face this question about caste system and Hinduism. So we need to, I want to share some of my thoughts and then have an open discussion. Um, this is my favorite way of starting. As we all know, you've seen this model that the outer layer of any religion, and in this case, we're talking about Hinduism, deals with the practices, rituals, rites, and festivals. These are important aspects of the religion. However, it is not core to the religion. It is very location specific. It is very time specific, time sensitive, and it is very subject or family sensitive. So these are important aspects, but they don't define the religion. The next layer comes is the values. Values are the mulya or the values the way we live in a society. Most religions came about to establish harmony and peace in the society. So there are a number of values which are overlapping many religions. When I talk about religions, for the sake of clarity and explaining some concepts, I may compare two groups of religion. One group is the Abrahamic religion, Abrahamic group, which comprises of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The second group is the Sanatan or the Dharma group of religions, which comprise of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. There's a lot of commonality between the Sanatan group of religions, and there's a lot of commonality between the Abrahamic religions. So one of the, I may compare these two groups, but just for comparison, I respect all religions, and a religion is a very personal choice. So I respect people selecting whatever the faith they want to pursue. So the values tend to overlap. The next layer is the goals in life. What are the goals in life? In Hinduism, as you know, is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Dharma is the operating principle. Just like any computer has an operating principle, dharma is how we operate in life. Dharma has 37 meanings in Sanskrit. But for this purpose, let us consider the main meanings, which is righteousness, social consciousness, and the duty based on the role and stage in life. So dharma, as long as you operate by dharma, then artha and kama. Artha is material wealth and material security. And kama is physical pleasure, good food, good music, sense of touch, good scenery, paintings. These are all a part of the kama because you are satisfying the five senses which have been endowed to us by Mother Nature. Now, these Artha, for instance, is time sensitive. What was considered to be financial security during Yajnavalkya time, probably 1,000 acres of land and 100 heads of cow, is different than what it is considered to be a financial security today. Maybe a good portfolio with a couple of apartments in Manhattan. So even the artha and to some extent kama becomes relatively time sensitive. Of course, we are all doing this towards to get to the ultimate liberation, union with the Brahma, which is the moksha. But so what is it that is eternal, which does not change, which was there thousands of years ago, which is there today and which will continue to be the same? And those are the foundational things, and those are called the core tenets of Hinduism. And those are the seven stars that I have identified from our scriptures. Again, this is not my own, it is mentioned, these are sprinkled all over our scriptures. So these are the seven stars. Brahman, one God or universal consciousness. Remember, if you recall, Brahman is Nirgun Nirakar and it is non judgmental. And it's also called Satchit Anand, absolute truth, eternal bliss, and infinite intellect. That is, or infinite brilliance. That is Brahman. And Brahman is non-judgmental. In other words, it is like gravity. Gravity is neither good nor bad. Gravity exists and applies to everyone. Similarly, the laws of Brahman or universal consciousness apply to everyone. You cannot pray to the gravity and jump out the building and hurt yourself. If you do jump out the building, you will break your leg. But if you jump off a cliff with a skydiving gear, you will have a beautiful view of the valley. Gravity was, in one case, good to you. In another case, was very bad to you. The gravity wasn't good or bad. It is your interaction with the gravity which fetched you favorable or unfavorable results. Similarly, Brahman does not either favor you or nor punishes you. It is your interaction with the Brahman, and that is what is called karma. And we talked about the law of karma. So that karma affects your outcome being favorable or unfavorable. So that was one Brahman, one God, and if you want to call it God. The second is Atman Brahman non-duality. That means part of that Brahman is inside all of us that makes us a universal brotherhood. And also the third star was universality of soul. If this part inside you of that Brahman, which is called Atman, we call it soul for the sake of simplicity. It's more than soul, but let's just for the sake of communication and simplicity call it soul. Then it is universal in nature. This soul exists in animals, in plants. In fact, the purists believe that it is in everything, including inanimate objects. So that makes all of us connected to each other through the Brahman and Atman. And that's why the whole universe is one big family and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Law of karma talks about as you reap, as you sow. We talked about the prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, and kriyaman karma, and how sanchita and kriyaman are within your control, whereas prarabdha is already spoken for or come to fruition. That we talked about in the last talk. So those are the four stars, and the next three stars are the paths to liberation, which is the moksha. Path of intellect, which is jnana yoga, path of devotion, which is bhakti yoga, and path of action, which is karma yoga. So today we are going to cover karma yoga. Tomorrow, then in December we will cover bhakti yoga, and in January we will cover jnana yoga. So these are the seven stars. I want you to remember these so that you can explain them to your neighbors, to your non-Hindu American neighbors, to your children, to your grandchildren. And the easy way to remember all seven is one God, Atman, Brahman, non-duality or Dvaita, universality of soul, law of karma for K, path of intellect, I, path of devotion, D, and path of action. Ask God idea. Very easy to remember, and you will be able to remember all the 7 stars. And that defines Hinduism. So today's focus is on Karma Yoga, and I talked about the 3 paths to moksha. Moksha is liberation. Which are the 3 paths? Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. Now, there is also Patanjali's Raja Yoga. A number of people feel that Raja Yoga itself can be a path, but according to the Shastras and my analysis, Raja Yoga is an extremely important and valuable way of calming your mind so that you can pursue the path that you've chosen. And you don't have to take one path. Each one of us has a different personality, different disposition, different likes, different circumstances in life. So, based on our own choices and disposition, you select and create your own customized path with a little bit of gyan and a little bit of bhakti, a little bit of karma, or a lot of bhakti and a little bit of karma, a lot of karma, a little bit of bhakti, or whatever. And whatever path you choose, Raja Yoga, Patanjali's Raja Yoga, helps you calm your mind, get yourself properly prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, to be able to pursue that path effectively. And that's where the Raja Yoga fits in my judgment. By the way, all of us need all 3 paths in different proportions. Uh, I give an analogy: bhakti and karma are like the 2 wings of an airplane, and jnana yoga is like the rudder. Bhakti without gyan makes the bhakti andhashraddha. That means blind faith. And then people do a lot of things which don't make sense at all, which can be destructive to the society, which can be destructive to themselves. So bhakti or jnana is absolutely essential. Similarly, karma without jnana, it makes a person extremely selfish. We hear about selfishness of politicians, of Wall Street hedge fund managers, and we've gone through 2008 when people were selling, Wall Street was selling things which they knew that which will affect adversely the pensioners and little old widows who have saved their life savings, and they will be go bankrupt, but still they didn't care. This is doing karma without jnana, without recognition, without the empathy for what its impact going to be. So karma without jnana makes a person extremely unscrupulous and extremely selfish. And Gyan without bhakti and karma is not good for the society. You can give up everything and go to the Himalayas, and what have one accomplished? You can get moksha or liberation, but you haven't helped your mankind. So, as earlier I said, that the goal in life is Atmano mokshartham, we should go towards the moksha, Jagat Hitaya cha, while helping the others. And if you want to do that, then you need the bhakti and or karma together, along with the direction and guidance of Gyan. So all 3 are important, but some people have predominance of one over the other. And that's why we are going to focus on Karma Yoga today. In December, we'll talk about Bhakti, and in January, we'll talk about Gyan. Uh, So when you are explaining it to your children or grandchildren or neighbors, what are the key features of Hinduism? Well, the 7 stars of Hinduism, which is the core of Hinduism, uh, promotes a very peaceful and green universe in the world. It is a unified core of teaching applicable to everyday life, one universal consciousness for all, universal brotherhood. We talked about the Atman being a part of Brahman in all of us, the same uh, part of the same Brahman that ties us together as a family, and also the same Brahman, part of that same Brahman, go exists in animals as well as plants. That makes it a extremely sensitive to environmentalism, and environmentalism itself is embedded in the thought process and philosophy of Hinduism. Law of karma says that nothing is going to happen unless you do it. So it's a very self-determination kind of religion. So nobody's going to give you anything. Uh, you pray for the sake of getting peace of mind and get blessings, but the action has to come from you. So law of karma says that you determine your own future, or if your own results, because you are facing the action consequences of your own actions. And we are all connected as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, but we as mature individuals in that evolutionary cycle, we need to be, as I said earlier at the beginning of the talk, I mentioned about Manushyatvam Mumukshatvam, Mahapurusha Samshaya. Manusha, to be born as a human being itself is a great accomplishment. So we have climbed up the ladder through all our actions, karmas from the past lives to be born as human beings. So it is our responsibility to take care of the other siblings who are in different stages, such as the animals and the plants and what have you. So we are the custodians of the earth, and we need to take care of it. And of course, there are multiple paths of to liberation: intellect, devotion, and action. Uh, Before I get into the karma yoga, as recent as a couple of days ago, I got an email, and there is some confusion or misunderstanding about Shruti and Smriti literature, and where do we go to get what is the truth about Hinduism? There are two types of scriptures within Hinduism: Shruti literature and Smriti literature. Shruti is considered to be the eternal truth, and Smriti is considered to be the interpretation of Shruti as interpreted by an individual. Um, so it is considered to be subordinate to Shruti. So if you want to know exactly what Hinduism says, what is Hindu philosophy is, you go to Shruti. Smriti is important, but ultimately Shruti is where the buck stops in terms of authority. And there are three texts. Most of you are familiar with them. They're called Prasthana Traya, that is foundational, three foundational texts. One is Ved contains Upanishads, and Brahma Sutra and Bhagavad Gita. These define what what Hinduism philosophy is all about. The interesting part is none of these Shruti literature have a specific author. Bhagavad Gita being an exception. It's I call it the Shruti as the collective knowledge and wisdom of the ancient rishis who were spiritual scientists, and they were the realized souls. So it's a collective wisdom, and Bhagavad Gita is an exception because it is written as a part of Mahabharata by Vyasa. However, it is so true to the teachings of Upanishads that it has been upgraded to be called Gitopanishad, Upanishads of Bhagavad Gita. So, and as they say, exceptions prove the rules. So Prasthana Traya comprises of these three texts. If you want to call it a word of God, because Shrutis are considered apaurisheya, that means it is not written by one individual. So it is a collective wisdom of the realized souls. Whereas Smriti literature is considered to be subordinate because it is written by an individual at a time. For example, Manu Smriti was written by Manu at the time when he existed. So Manu Smriti does not define Hinduism. I have this discussion with people, and most scholars will agree with me, Swamis will agree with me, that Manu's Smriti is Manu's interpretation of Upanishads and Brahma Sutra and Bhagavad Gita as he thought fit during his time. Some of it may be applicable today, some of it may not be applicable today. The Manu who's blamed for not treating women properly, is also known to have said that the household where the woman is happy is a happy household. That's where the gods reside. So he had given a lot of respect for women. But the same Manu has said some things about women that people take objection to. Same is true with various castes. But again, that does not define Hinduism. Manusmriti is Manu's interpretation of Upanishads at the time that he existed. It is time sensitive, it is subjective, and it is location sensitive. Um, Puranas and Itihas, sorry, the Puranas, there are a number of Puranas. They also convey very important message. However, they are not the ultimate. Ultimate, you go to Shruti. Itihas, Mahabharat, and Ramayana. Both are excellent texts. There's a lot of truth in it. There's a lot of good teaching in it. A lot of teaching which is in line with the Shruti literature. But in the final analysis, philosophically, it is the Upanishads which where you go. The rest of them, the Smriti literature is there for all of us to understand the Upanishads so that they make it easier and more relevant to everyday life. Veda, I keep saying Veda and Upanishad. Veda has two parts, Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. Karma Kanda comprises of all the ways of chanting the mantras, the hymns, the havans, whatever the ahuti is to be given, the havans. And Jnana Kanda is full of philosophy, and Upanishads are a part of Jnana Kanda. There are 108 Upanishads they are considered to be, and there are 12 considered principal. There are many other minor Upanishads as well. Then there are 4 Vedas, as you can see on the slide, and of course Upavedas such as Dhanur Veda is the art of war. Ayurveda is the science of life, and there are 2 other Vedas, a few other Upavedas. Uh, each of the Vedas are have some salient or important or critical sentences which kind of summarize what's written in the Vedas. But I just want to share with you the 4 Mahavakyas, and you can see the similarity between all the Vedas. First is Rig Veda, one of the oldest one. Aitareya Upanishad has Prajnanam Brahman. That means brilliance is Brahman. We talked about Brahman, the universal consciousness. The brilliance is the infinite intellect. That is Brahman. And Rig Veda has that as a Mahavakya. That means a very major sentence, which summarizes what Rig Veda is trying to say. Yajurveda has Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. We talked about that part of that Brahman is inside me, and that is Aham Brahmasmi. And Samaveda says Tattvamasi. That means you are also Brahman. You are Brahman. That means that Brahman, part of that Brahman is inside you. So I have that, you have that. That makes us brothers. And the Atharva Veda says that the self itself is Brahman. And that self meaning Atman, or soul, or self, let's call it self or Atman. And we said that that is inside animals and plants and everything. So I am Atma Brahman. So we are all connected through because we all have the same Ansha or essence of Brahman. And Brahman is infinite brilliance. So that is, in a nutshell, that is the teachings of the Maha Upanishads. So now get to the karma. Karma has been used in many contexts. Today's topic is karma yoga, as against any other usage of karma. Karma is important because Bhagavad Gita is a lot of shlokas pertain to the karma and action, because it is of course, an advice given on the war field. So there is a lot of action going on there, or was about to happen there. But this shlok I put down is from Bhagavad Gita 3.8. Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma jayo ya karmanaha sharira yatra pichanatena prasiddhe the karmanaha. That means you perform your obligatory and prescribed duties, but the action is superior than inaction. And through inaction, even the maintenance of your body is not possible. Action is absolutely essential for survival. Our body does action every step of the way, every nanosecond of the way. Action is absolutely essential for. In fact, karma yoga, or the action orientation philosophy, is so critical and so important, and such a major thread of Bhagavad Gita is that Balgangadhar Tilak, who has written the Gita Rahasya, calls his Gita Rahasya, which is the commentary on Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga Shastra, because he says that the whole Gita is about Karma Yoga, and Karma Yoga is action orientation. And in today's time, I feel that Karma Yoga, or the action orientation, is absolutely critical, essential, and important. Um, so karma is action, and karma is used all over, even in the United States. All my colleagues and everybody uses the word karma, and they say, "Oh, it's a good karma, it's bad karma." So karma as an action, but the actions can comprise of various types of actions. There's nitya karma, that means every day which is required. You don't gain out of anything, but if you don't do it, yeah, you can get affected adversely. Simple things like eating and sleeping and things like that. These are the nitya karma. Naimittik karma is the karma which has to be done on a specific occasion. There's a marriage ceremony. There's whatever birthday ceremony, whatever you find a reason, nimitta, for doing the karma. Kamya and nishiddha karma, number four, is the karma which you should not be doing. Stealing, killing somebody, doing nasty things to other people, not behaving properly in the society. That is the nishiddha karma. And kamya karma is karma where you expect something gainful. These are all the different types of karmas. So karmas can be good, bad. Karmas can be categorized in this way. Karmas can be categorized as kayik, which is the actually action, doing the action. Vachik, that means you speak about certain things. Even that is considered to be karma. If you praise somebody, if you criticize someone, if you give a lecture, those are also considered to be karma. And manasik, if you think, your thoughts can be considered to be karma, if they because thoughts eventually progress into speech, and then eventually progress into action. So the Bhagavad Gita gives a very broad definition to the karma or action, and that is the beauty of it. And Karma Yoga deals with this broad definition of karma, all the karmas. Just be aware of that. Then comes karma vipak, which is the law of karma. We talked about that. Today we are not going to talk about law of karma. We're talking about the karma yoga. Uh, karma kanda, which I just mentioned, karma kanda and jnana kanda of the Vedas, uh, and of course the karma yoga, which is specific philosophical approach to life. So you can see the difference in different contexts. The word karma is being used in different contexts, but it's important to recognize that we are talking about karma yoga today, which is specific philosophical approach. Let's So what is the path of action and karma yoga? Most of us have heard this, karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbu mate sangot swakarmani. Very often quoted, very popularly quoted shlok from Bhagavad Gita, shlok number 47 from chapter 2, which says, and which is interpreted by many as you can only control the activity. Do your duty, do your best. Don't worry about the results of the action. And when I hear that, I feel I when I first heard that, I felt that, but I do some actions with the expectation that I'll get something back. Otherwise, I won't be doing this. So I started digging into it, and I'll share with you my interpretation of this. Karman, what it says is, do your action. Yes, you have the right to do the duty, but not expect anything. So I said to myself that what would a young person, uh, the next generation, be saying? That, hey, Dad, I want to take on this project because if the project is successful, I will get a promotion, I'll get more money or whatever, a promotion within the company, and I'll move up. Doctor says that, I want to go into medicine to become a doctor so that I like that, but I also like engineering, but I want to go into medicine because I want to help other people, but at the same time, I want to make enough money, good money, and that's why I'm going to head that way. Is that being is that being expecting some result or rewards? Most of us make a decision based on that. So this should be interpreted in a such a in a fashion that while making the decision, you take into account all the pluses and minuses, the benefits and costs involved, efforts involved. But once the decision is made, then you focus on the goal and focus on your duty and focus on the activity. So if you are a doctor, if you have chosen to become a doctor and gone through the studies, and then when you are attending the emergency and there's a wounded person comes with a bullet wound, your focus ought to be to fix that person, to save that person, help that person from that injury, rather than worrying about whether that person is a pauper, a homeless person from the streets of Washington or Chicago, and whether he is in a position to pay you or not. That's when you don't think about what's in it for me. You think about what's in it for me before you make the decision to get into medicine. Once you've gotten into it, once the project is started, once your duty, you've decided upon the duty, then you do not think about it. So it's okay to assess the pluses and minuses of a career, of a project. If you are into IT, for instance, you want to take on a project, you want to see how successful it will be, and if it is going to be successful, what's in it for you before you start the project. But if you start the project and then if your boss leaves, or if the company has some difficulty, you don't mess up the project. You do your duty with professionalism, with total commitment to your profession, as well as to your decision that you will be doing whatever you have chosen to do. That's when I distinguish between the goal, which is dheya, and personal reward, phala, phalasha. And if you start distinguishing between the two, you will make the right decision, because the Karmanyavadhikarista says focus on your goal, not on the phalasha. Phalasha means what's in it for me. And we see this all the time, many, many times in the sports, for instance. I'll give you an example, and it's stuck in my mind. We moved here from Chicago, and Chicago Bulls was the basketball team, and they got the NBA championship 3 times in a row. The third time they were playing against Utah, I think, and they were one. There was 1 second left, and they were 1 point behind the competition to win the final third time in a row the championship of NBA. Michael Jordan, many of you have heard his name, the famous Michael Jordan of Chicago Bulls. He got the ball. He could have scored that and gone in the history as the winning shot of the hat trick win for the championship. What an honor! But he noticed that his teammate Paxton was closer to the net and had a better chance of making the basket. So he passes on the ball. Paxton scores. Paxton goes in the history as the winning shot in winning the third time in a row, the hat trick winning of the NBA championship. But Jordan did not get that honor at that time. But at that time, Jordan wasn't thinking, what's in it for me? He could have taken a shot and say, thinking that, hey, if I make this shot, I'll go in the history eternally as the guy who scored the winning shot. But he was focused on Dhey. The goal was to win the game. So he passed on the ball to Paxton, who scored and who went into the history. It's a different ball game that Jordan signed up with Nike for over $35 million later on. That's fine. Enjoy the rewards of what you've accomplished. But at the time when the project was going on, at the time when you're tending the patient, at the time when you're playing the game, focus on the day. And that is what Karmanye Vadikar is telling you, that it's okay to assess what's in it for me before you make the decision. But once the decision is made for any specific thing, then focus on being making fulfilling your commitment and being loyal to your profession. Similarly, there is different roles in life. We all have interpersonal relationships and different roles in life and different stages in life. For instance, I have a role as a husband, as a son, as a brother, as a member of the society, and we need to fulfill those responsibilities. That is also the path of action. That is also my duty or dharma. And those have to be done sincerely while maintaining the commitment. If I'm living in the society, I should be committed to performing the proper responsibility as a citizen. That's why it's very important to vote. So make sure that you are all voting. I'm sure you are all going to vote. Basically, the law of the karma yoga path of action says everything. What are the characteristics of professionalism? We all know what professionalism all about, and karma yoga is a great definition of professionalism. Now, Bhagavad Gita goes one step further and goes into the concept of stita prajna and a true yogi. In fact, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, whenever he talks about yogi in Bhagavad Gita, he talks about karma yogi, because in our Hindu literature they talk about there are two um, um, darshanas which go together. One is Sankhya and one is Yoga. Sankhya Yoga is together. Generally, these two darshanas are considered to be together. And Sankhya talks about karma sannyas. That means give up everything and pursue through meditation and through sadhana and samadhi so that you can go towards the path of moksha. Whereas yoga darshan talks about karma yoga. And according to many learned people, that yoga is essentially karma yoga. So you do all of these and continue to do work so that you can help other people and on the way towards the moksha or towards the liberation. And that's why a lot of people don't, they start with this shlok, but the next one says, Yogastha kuru karmani sangam taktva dhananjaya siddha siddho samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. That means if you can stay equanimous, if you can stay calm, whether you win or whether you do not win. Siddha, asiddha. Siddha, siddho, samo bhutva. If you treat the success and failure equally, then that's when you have reached the stage of being a true yogi. Most of us are human beings with a lot of emotions, and we enjoy when we are successful, and we feel sad when we are not, and that's okay. okay, that's just fine. But at least we know what the goal ought to be. So basically, Karma Yoga says that distinction, make a distinction between Dheya and Phalasha. And Phalasha is what's in it for me. And when you're doing the action, if you keep thinking about what's in it for me, then the action will never get done professionally or properly. That's when you need to focus on the, once the action is started, you focus on the Dheya or the goal. Um, So key takeaway of karma yoga is karma is action is inevitable. It is most dominant path for many people. It leads to jnana. Has to Many people feel that it has to be supplemental with bhakti and shraddha, and we will cover this in December when we talk about bhakti yoga. The focus on the process and action, not what's in it for me. um, Arjuna said to Krishna that if I kill, if I wage this war, Mahabharat, and if I kill all my cousins and uncles and gurus, history will call me killer of your brethren. What a blemish on my character. And if I don't kill them and lose the war, then I'll become a loser. What a blemish on the character. So I got no win situation. Lord, what do I do? And that's when he said that we considered all these issues prior to declaring war. Now that the war has started, now don't think about it. Now keep the dheya, the goal in mind. And the goal in mind is to win that war. Doesn't matter who comes in front of you, whether it's Dronacharya, Krupacharya, Bhishmacharya, they are your enemy. And that's how you need to go. So the after the process has begun, don't keep thinking about what's in it for me, how I will be judged. Perform your duty without expectation of the personal reward. Concentrate on being the best you can, regardless of personal consequences, and perform your designated and socially accepted roles appropriately. You decide your profession based on your aptitude, likes, and disposition. These last couple of bullets are very important. In fact, the perform your designated duty and concentrate on doing the best you can is very important, because your children, your grandchildren are going to say to you that what kind of advice is that? Do your best and don't worry whether you get your paycheck or not. Do your best, don't worry whether you get your bonus or not. That is not what the advice is. Advice is evaluate all of that before making a commitment. Once the commitment is made, do not stray away from the commitment. Keep the goal in mind and perform that. And you can take that into account as a learning lesson for the next time you make a commitment. But once a commitment has been made, you need to do it right. And that is what the message is of the karma yoga. And the last bullet, you decide on your profession based on your aptitude, your likes, your disposition. That is your choice, depending upon your disposition. And this leads us into a very important topic, which is controversial in nature. And I deliberately put it in there because our children and our neighbors and our colleagues do know that Hinduism means caste system. It is taught in the American schools, and some of the teaching is incorrect. But when the kids come home, we have difficulty explaining what it is, why it is, and what it needs to be done, what needs to be done. So I put down this karma and caste system. Is my position in society predetermined because I was born into a certain family, or is it by choice? So let us have some background information, and then let's have some discussion on that. Uh, it's the elephant in the room. We need to talk about it. People tend to. It's not going to go away by sweeping it under the rug. So let's bring it out. Now let me give you some background. A healthy and stable society's needs comprise of the society has to have knowledge. There is a Silicon Valley in the electronic knowledge. There's Texas and New Jersey has a lot of chemical knowledge. So there is a knowledge base in a society. Then there has to be a protection from the predators, the military. Then there has to be commerce, farming, wealth generation. And then there has to be artisans and service and craftsmen. These are the four aspects of a healthy and stable society. So just like Maslow has an individual need, we need clothing and food and shelter, then belongingness, and then as you go up the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we talked about it in the last lecture that you get to self-actualization and spirituality. Similarly, a society has a need, and that is service people, craftsmen, artisans, wealth creators, protectors, and the knowledge-based people. So this is true in all ancient societies. So let's look at it. Egypt, ancient Egypt society, Egyptian society has pharaoh at the top, and then senior officials, scribes. Okay, here it is. Scribes, skilled artisans, peasants and farmers and workers, and servants and slaves. This was the Egyptian, ancient Egyptian society. Let's see, Greek. I'm picking up some of the ancient civilizations. Greek civilization is considered to be one of the ancient ones. What is the Greek civilization? Socrates actually didn't write anything, but Plato wrote, and many people feel that whatever he has written is essentially Socrates' ideas. So Plato's, you must have read about or heard about the Republic, and in that there is utopia. So what does the Republic say? Republic, Plato's idea of an ideal republic, ideal city, ideal state was to have three categories of citizens: the philosophers, the auxiliaries, and the artisans. So his idea, and I'll share you, I'll in a very brief, I'll tell you. In Plato's Utopia, he feels that all the people should be taught certain basic mathematics and certain basic skills and reading, writing, and arithmetic until the age of 20. Then there should be a testing. In that test, those who pass and do well, they move forward. Those who don't, they remain, and they are considered to be the artisans. They are taught vocational skills, some kind of arts and crafts, or they do some menial labor because they are capable, but they are physically capable, and their mental capabilities are limited to that level. Those who have passed that for another 10 years, they are taught the art of war and weaponry and fighting. Um, and then they were given a test. For, and those who pass, they move on. Those who don't, they are categorized as auxiliaries. They are the military people. They will do the protection. They will do some kind of um, organization of the military and things like that. So those were considered to be the auxiliaries. And then, of course, those who passed that from the age of 30, they are for 15 years, they were taught philosophy, and they became the philosophers and the philosopher kings, and they were going to be the administrators. They set up the policies, and those were considered to be the philosophers. And this was his ideal of a society. Philosophers were leaders with foresight, knowledge, wisdom. Auxiliaries were courage, strength, protection of state, and artisans had a desire, physical pleasure, material gains. They did a lot of art and music and what have you. This was their ideal state. Now, where it failed was, according to Utopia, Plato's Utopia, in Republic, the philosophers, they because they were the ones who were managing and administrating, they were not allowed to own any wealth, any property, to the point that they went to the point of not having a family. So they were allowed to mingle, and men and women were treated equally. They were allowed to mingle and cohabitate, but they were not allowed to keep their children. The children belong to the state. And because the idea was, anytime a person has any attachment to anyone, then there is a tendency and temptation of not being wise and just in delivering the law. So he wanted people to be just. So they have nothing to lose. They were looked after very well by the state. Anyway, it failed. You can read about it. But what I was getting at is the best of the philosophers felt that the society needed these three categories, sometimes four or five categories, as you saw in Egypt. Here is the Greek. Um, Here is the ancient Japan. Samurais, divinity, royals were the descendants of divinity. Samurais were the philosophers, administrators, and then the farmers, artisans, and merchants. They were there. One farmers produced wealth, they used the wealth, and the merchants distributed. And Buraku means there was a small segment of the population which did all of the, they called it dirty work or whatever. In other words, every society had a hierarchy based on what was required. What does Purusha Sukta do? Purusha Sukta is a sukta or a string of stotra in or shlokas in Rigveda. And Purusha Sukta is blamed for caste system and what have you. So Purusha Sukta says a number of things, but Purusha Sukta explains the whole society, whole universe in terms of a cosmic man. A cosmic man with thousands of heads and thousands of arms and thousands of feet. And in a society, this cosmic man provides the knowledge. And where did that come from? From the head. Where did the strength came from? From the shoulders and the arms. Where did the wealth came from? From the thighs. And where did the skills and the artisans and the service and the skills came from? They came from the feet. And this man, that's how he became full. Brahmanosya mukhamasi bahu rajanyakita uru tadasya dvaisha padyam shudro ojarika. And this is a cosmic man, big, huge, and the whole moon and sun came from here, and it explains all the cosmic things. Where did the stars come from? And so this is not this this one shlok is not the only Purusha Sukta. It's a full Purusha Sukta with 15, 17 shlokas about explaining the whole cosmic law. But as you can see, that the Purusha Sukta talks about the same four requirements of the society and basically gives an analogy. It is not saying that one is better than the other. However, it does translate later on into the population. And let me just, I was going to build this thing up. However, I will just go back. Okay. The knowledge base was, anybody with the knowledge base was considered to be Brahmin. Anybody who showed strength and courage were categorized that way. And anybody who was in service industry or a skills craftsman and what have you was considered to be the Shudra. So knowledge, power, wealth, and labor were distributed across the society. And the pyramid is shown only to the point that just like in any other society, the number of people or percentage of the society involved in knowledge is much smaller than those who are involved in service industry. That is true in today's modern time. The number of people involved in research are much, much smaller than the people involved in production who are on the machine floor. And that is why we are finding that we want manufacturing back, because it creates employment. It creates employment at this level. Whereas you can do a lot of research, but for every researcher, you probably need 10, 15, maybe 50, no, 50 people on the production floor. So basically, this pyramid shows the percentage of the society in terms of the total society that is required for that particular function. Now, so what does the Vedic philosopher say? Vedic philosopher said, and I will quote Bhagavad Gita, the last bullet point here, the four Bhagavad Gita, because it has captured the essence of Upanishad. Bhagavad Gita says, Chatur Varnam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha Tasya Kartaramati Mapina Vidya Kartaram Abhyam. Chatur Varnam Maya Shrishtam. These four Varnas, they called it Varna. These four Varnas I have created based on Guna, which is the disposition, and Karma, which is the action. So depending upon your person's disposition and what he's engaged or she is engaged in, that will categorize that person. So if you are disposed to do the service work, then you will be categorized into a Shudra category. If you are disposed to go for a war because you're strong and that's where your strength comes in, that's your tendency comes in, and you get engaged in that, then that's what you become. If you are engaged in studies and research and teaching, and that's where your strength comes from, that's what you like, and that's what you're engaged in. So guna and karma, that's your disposition and that's your action, or then that you become into that category. And to support this, I will quote you from Samaveda, Vajrasuchika Upanishad. This Upanishad talks about how do you define, and I've taken the example of a Brahmin. Who is a Brahmin? And you know the words Brahmin. Sometimes when it's a non-Hindu audience, I have to explain there's a difference between Brahman, Brahma, and Brahmin. Brahman is universal consciousness, we talked about. Brahma is a deity. Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, that's the creator, that's a deity. And Brahmin is the category of people who are engaged in the transaction of business, or sorry, knowledge, who are engaged in the knowledge profession. Those are the Brahmins. So Vajrasuchika Upanishad, which is a part of Samaveda, talks about who should be called a Brahmin. And as you know, Upanishads, the beauty of our religion, and that's why our faith, I'm always amazed that in the Upanishads also, the beauty is they are full of question and answer. The disciple does not take the word of the guru. They question him. They ask him to explain. They challenge the guru. And so this is another thing. Is this social division, the disciple asks, the shishya asks, is this social division justified because of jiva, which is the essence inside you, or deha, or because of the body, or jati by birth, or by jnana or knowledge, or by deeds, karma, or values of performing rites, or dharmic, that means I can perform pujas and whatever. Who is a Brahmin? Who is the Brahmin? Brahmin, and the answer given to him is the Brahmin is the one who understands that his soul is without the second. That means he has the spiritual bent, knows that the same soul in him is in everyone else, is in all things pervading within and without, is free from malice, is fulfills his nature, is not driven by the cravings of the worldly objects and desires or delusions, and lives a life untouched by spite, ostentation, that means show off, is not a show off, pride, or need to impress others. That person is a Brahmin. And I'll give you an example of Chandogya Upanishad, another Upanishad, I think it's a part of the Yajurveda, of Jabal Satyakam. Satyakam story, many of you have heard of it. Some of you who haven't, I'll tell you in a very brief manner. Satyakam is a child of a lady called Jabala. And Satyakam wants to learn scriptures and study under Rishi Gautama. So he goes to Gautama and says, I want to be your Shishya and disciple. Would you take me as your disciple so that you can teach me all the Vedas and what have you, Upanishads and so he says, yes, I will, but this is a really important teaching. And I need to make sure that I'm teaching it to the right person who has the responsibility and has been brought up uh, appropriately so that he can keep this with the way it needs to be maintained and it needs to be practiced. So give me your lineage. Who is your father? And he says, okay, I'll go and find out. So he asks his mother. He goes and asks. So Jabala says that, beta, son, I was serving number of rishis at one time and when you were born. So basically she was a dasi to a number of rishis. So I don't know really which rishi is your father. You get the point. And Jabala says, so she says, but I know and you know that I am your mother. So you tell the guru that I am Satyakam Jabala because I don't know who my father is, but I know who's my mother. So he goes back to the Rishi Gautama and says, Rishi, I asked my mother, and this is the story she gave me. So I don't know who's my father, but she is my mother, so I am called Satyakam Jabala. And Rishi Gautama says that you got to be capable of the knowledge. You got to be in the category of a Brahmin because only a Brahmin is expected to speak such bitter truth without any hesitation. So you have the qualities, you have the disposition, you have the guna which is required to perform the duties expected to be performed for the knowledge profession, which is a Brahmin. So I will indoctrinate you with the knowledge so that you can perform the duties associated with knowledge profession and you will become and you can become my shishya. So he takes him as, and later on in the Upanishad, Satyakam himself has many disciples and he becomes a major rishi himself. So there are many stories of Shantanu and Janaka, and thereby it is the knowledge, it is the guna and karma which has dictated what category the person is in. Anyway, that was the approach by the Vedic scholars. So we talked about the Greek, the Egyptian, the Japanese, the Vedic. Now, where did this caste system came to India? So it is very interesting as you look at it. There are three things, three words being thrown around: caste, varna, and jati. Varna is a Sanskrit word. Varna is also considered to be color, but Varna was a category basically. And Purusha Sukta and Upanishads, they talk about the Varna classification. Jati is community based. So there is a Kumbhar Jati. That means it's a community of potters. It's a community of blacksmiths. It's a community of goldsmiths and what have you. But caste system is an English word which was brought to India by the Portuguese. Well, actually, it wasn't brought to India by Portuguese. It was brought to India by probably the British, in fact, by the British, but it's originated in Portuguese. What happened was the Iberian. We got to go back to the European history. Iberian Peninsula, which is current day Spain and Portugal, that area, It was basically ruled by the Muslims for a number of years, for hundreds of years. The Moors were there. And finally, in the late 14th, 15th century, the the Christians, Catholic Christians, basically conquered that area, and they marked the end of the Muslim rule in Spain. And the majority of the Muslims, and there were some Jews also, were forced to accept conversion into Catholicism at that time in Spain, Portugal, and that area. And then they were made into new Christians. But they did not want these new Christians, converted people, to pick up important positions or be treated equally. So they had this word called limpieza de sangre. Limpieza de sangre. That means purity of blood. That means they could not hold, unless you are pure of that blood of the old Christian, you could not hold high offices, public offices, and you are a new Christian, so you are converted. This created a notion of superiority and purity of blood amongst the European cultures. Um Inquisition happened about that time, and it was the beginning of what they call Sistema de Casta. This was the beginning of the Sistema de Casta. And by 1847, there was a major Yucatan caste war broke out in the Maya and the Mayan people, because the Spanish um, conquered Latin America, Mexico, and that area, and they took the same concept there. They forced conversion, and then there was some fight against them in Mexico. So around the same time, in 1857, the Indian soldiers had risen against the British. And at that time, the British felt that we need to do something. We need to do something to understand what is going on in the Indian society. And so the British borrowed that concept of casta, sistema de casta, from what they had seen in Spain and Portugal. And don't forget that these are European cultures, so that there was a lot of exchange of intellectuals and some papers, sociological papers being exchanged. So British picked it up, and it was under these British, the larger European colonial experiences of invasion and imposition of caste system in the Americas. They brought it to India, and Sir Herbert Hope Risley in 1901 was the first one, the then commissioner of the census. He conducted the first census in India in 1901. And what he did was, he took all these jatis and varnas were fluid, relatively fluid, but he took all these jatis and force fitted in into these four castas. Okay, and he went one step further. He had seven different classifications based on how people looked, how tall they were, what was the shape of the nose, and what have you. But that further got deteriorated. That system got further exploited and deteriorated by politicians, by other invaders, and basically what we have is the current day caste system. So it is not originally there was a classification within the society, but it was based on um, disposition, your guna, and karma, action. What was your profession? But over a period of time, the other thing which contributed to all this was also that the support, financial support, dwindled as the British came, because in the old days, the king used to support the Brahmins, for instance, and the artisans. So all these works of Ellora and Ajanta and all of those temple building and the carving, they were all supported by the king. And the king and the merchants. The merchants had the wealth. Merchants supported the king. The king provided protection. The Brahmins provided knowledge, and the artisans were happy performing, expressing themselves in the art form. And there was some service folks who were servicing, but they could move around uh, within the society if they liked a specific profession. But over a period of time, what happened was that as the art or the knowledge got passed on to the son and then to the son within the family, that became their profession, that became their jati, and then it stuck to them. And then people became possessive of their knowledge. They became possessive of, because that was their way of earning their livelihood. So that, along with the British imposing the system, the casta on us, the whole thing got messed up, and further politicians exploited that, and what we got is what we got. So, what is the relevance of caste system in modern day society? It's absolutely none. I was giving somebody an example, a couple of examples. In the business world, there used to be production, marketing, finance, and accounting, and R&D. Um, these were all distinguished um, functions. So the production guy did not go into marketing. The marketing guy did not go into finance or accounting. But all that on HR people were a completely different group of people. But over a period of time, and this was true 20, 25, 30 years ago. But today, that is not true because of the IT and because of the intermixing of disciplines. There's so much of intermixing that the whole system is completely different. Similarly, in the caste, today's relevance is what it was or what it was supposed to be is irrelevant because the whole modern society has evolved into a completely different thing. Um, Sometimes I give an example of myself that I was born into a Brahmin family, so I'm a Brahmin according to this traditional thinking in India. But I am an engineer, so does that make me and a businessman? So that makes me a Vaishya, and my area of expertise in water and wastewater, so that makes me Shudra or Bhangi. And I like to do some physical exercises. So does that make me Kshatriya as well, or I can verbally fight with people, and does that make me Kshatriya? So all aspects of this supposedly traditional caste are in me and in you and in many of us. So, in my judgment, the relevance of caste system today's modern time non-existent. So, how do we address these perils of caste system? Through urbanization, through democratization, through economic independence and parity, changes in the value system. The main thing is this is being taught even today in American schools, and our children come home saying that, okay, wow, Hinduism has a bad thing called caste system. How do we explain it to them? And unless we keep talking about it, unless we keep repeating it, this will not go away. And it is our responsibility to educate our children, our grandchildren, our neighbors that how the system is being misinterpreted and it is not relevant today, just as many things in many faiths are not relevant today because it may have been relevant at one time. And our faith is very old faith. So it may have been relevant 4,000, 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. But in today's modern society, the way it was explained or it was being practiced is not relevant. Okay. Um, with that, I think I really appreciate your engagement with me, and I'm open for conversation, discussion, and criticism. Uh, but with that, Aniruddha, I can take some question and answer. I didn't keep track of the time, but I think we have plenty of time.
Yeah, definitely. We do have 20 of time. So let me first stop the recording. Uh, so